Welcome back. It's April. Spring has sprung. And it is time for another installment of Ask Eddie and Ann. And, we're up against it a little bit here, Ann, because I know there were a lot of questions that were submitted. And we're going to try to get to as many as possible right off the bat. I'm hoping we get like 30 questions in this first installment. I know there's going to be more installments this month. And we studiously avoided starting doing this on April 1st because then nobody would have believed any of our answers. So we waited to record the first installment in April. So let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. And this is from Ray. Last year, news came out that the Egyptian theater run by the American Cinematheque Group was sold to Netflix, the streaming service. Since NOIR City Hollywood is presented there every year, will the festival continue to be presented there once the pandemic is over?
That is the plan. I see no reason why that won't continue. I mean, I was aware of this when it first started happening, and I've been in touch with all I have nothing whatsoever to do with Netflix, but was in touch with the folks at the American Cinematheque, all my colleagues there. We've been doing it for, it's over 20 years now. And quite honestly, the fate of the Noir City Festival and other festivals that relied on the Egyptian was, that was part of the negotiation with Netflix, because we wanted to be able to maintain we wanted to be able to maintain festivals, whereas Netflix was really giving the Egyptian the weekends, but wanted the weekdays for themselves, which is contrary to the way you would think it would go. But I don't want to do a festival where you're just on the weekends. I want to do it straight through, like 10 consecutive days. So there had to be some special dispensation for us, and it's okay. So I expect that the bigger issue is the pandemic, not the sale to Netflix. Huh. So I suspect we will be back there.
Yeah, and I guess just since we're on the subject, so what can you tell us about NOIR City festivals at this point?
I noticed that theaters are opening back up, but all I'm going to say is this. As I've said in the past, it is entirely our intention to resume the festivals. It now seems doubtful that we'll be resuming in Austin at the Alamo Drafthouse since they closed.
No.
But we have plans to begin in a couple of new venues. But the thing that makes it difficult for us is people who operate movie theaters these days, it's normal for a theater to open the doors and operate, turn on the lights, show the movies if there's 50 people in the house.
Yeah.
That's the way movie theaters are now. We honestly can't do a Noir City festival for 50 people.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. We make no money. They make no money. It's just, it doesn't cover the cost of the expense of getting me there to host the shows and all that. So we have to be able to fill a theater in order for it to be economically feasible. So we are kind of waiting to see how the pandemic shakes out. So I guess the last thing I'll say on that score is, if there are people watching this who don't want to take the vaccine and they don't want to wear the masks, I'm just going to say, then you're contributing to the Noir City Festival's staying in limbo, because it's only when the virus is completely done that we can even envision a full theater again. And that's the only way we can do it. The prospect of filling the house is what keeps us going, because that's where the money comes from.
Yeah. And this is from Brian. Just as there's a recorded announcement at a movie screenings about turning off cell phones, would you consider an announcement informing the audience about not laughing inappropriately? People need to be educated. I know how much you and Ann care about the importance of showing these wonderful movies on the big screen, but if I had a choice between seeing them with an audience that is immature or watching at home on my TV, I'd rather stay at home, quite frankly.
Okay. David Packard owns the Stanford Theater in Palo Alto, California. He can do with it what he wants because he owns it and he made the whole thing. And David Packard was notorious for coming out before shows and telling the audience basically telling the audience not to have fun. Like, you know, there's nothing funny in this movie. Don't laugh at this. You know, he took it all very seriously. Like, it sounds like this person takes it seriously. And I don't actually subscribe to that theory. I mean, look, Ann, you've been going to the Noir City Festival in San Francisco, you know, for years and years and years. And I know for a fact that when we started, there were a lot of people like that, laughing at what other people considered inappropriate things. There was a famous moment when a lot of gay guys were laughing at Joan Crawford in Sudden Fear. And a woman came up to me in the lobby, like, go in there and make them stop. This is my favorite movie and they're destroying it, you know? And it's like, well, you know, it's a movie theater. It's not a museum. Yeah. You know, people are going to react the way they react. And this is, honestly, this is one of the things I need to live with because, as I just explained, we need full houses. Mm-hmm. And let's face facts. If you fill a theater with 1,400 people, 200 of those people are going to be idiots. Sorry, yeah. That's just the way the world is, you know?
Yeah.
So if you really don't want to see a movie on a huge movie screen with like-minded people because there's 3 or 4 people who are going to act like stupid fools, then I'm sorry, you can't enjoy it. You know, if it's not a sellout, my advice would be to go sit in the balcony, find a seat by yourself. That's what I do when I go to the movies. You know, I never want to sit like where I can't escape. But you know, I think we've kind of had questions like this before, and that's just, I've learned to just live with it. You know, I cannot envision telling people don't laugh.
Yeah.
Because then you're the arbiter of what's funny and what isn't. You know, there are things that transpire in these films that are funny. Yeah. You know, and the other thing is, if you get an audience, I'm not going to say 1,400, but let's say you have an audience like at the Egyptian in LA, 618 seats, right? What's really just a titter, like, yeah. Suddenly sounds like massive laughter.
Yeah.
When it's 400 people doing it, yeah. Right? And so you say, "Oh, this audience is terrible. They don't understand the movie." And it's like, no, they do. Each person, I'm sure, does. But it's a cumulative effect where it sounds like the audience doesn't really know what they're looking at. It's just, you know, it's like when I guarantee that this person, when they say I'd stay home and watch it, well, if they stayed home and watched with their wife or their husband or something, they're going to go at something, and that's not going to seem offensive. But if there were 500 people doing that, it would sound like, oh my God, you know, what's with these people? So that's my opinion about that.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add, my dad told me a story one time about when he saw Niagara, you know, when it was actually in the theaters when it was first released. And he said the audience was like laughing all the way through it because they thought it was so ridiculous. So, you know, it just happens, you know.
Well, and another thing that's very, you know, I've said this many times, I look at film screenings as like live performances. Yeah. They're all different, right? Yeah. Like I showed a movie called Cry of the Hunted in Los Angeles. The audience went nuts because they found the movie to be so outrageously funny with all of its bizarre sexual symbolism. And I said, oh my God, when I show this movie in San Francisco, it's going to blow the roof off of the Castro Theater. You know, there's all kinds of weird gay stuff with Barry Sullivan and Vittorio Gassman, like, you know, exploding chimneys and all this crazy phallic symbols and stuff. And I showed it at the Castro and nobody reacted.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't one chuckle that I thought there would be. You know, which to me wasn't bad because, you know, it's like watching Desert Fury or The Big Combo or something. It's like, I hope you're laughing because these people went out on a limb to sneak this stuff in the movie. And, you know, anyway.
No, I was at that screening and it was like, I mean, it was definitely, wow, this is really homoerotic. But maybe with San Francisco, we're just like, you know.
I thought it would go over differently. Anyway.
Wow. Good movie. Okay. This one's from John Hall. Eddie mentioned a few weeks back that there will be a Flickr Alley release of 2 Monogram Noir titles. What films will be released and has a release date been announced?
No release date announced yet. The titles will be The Guilty and High Tide, the restorations that we have done. And we're also, you know, there are going to be 5 movies coming as soon as we can get it cranked. Because of the pandemic, we'll have repeat performance. The 2 of our Argentinian noirs, Los Taos Amargos and La Bestia Debe Morir, The Beast Must Die. And then the 2 B noirs, The Guilty and High Tide. We're debating whether or not we should do The Guilty and High Tide as like a single package. You know, since they're both short B movies, maybe we'll release that as a double bill. But those are definitely in the pipeline. We'll see how many come out in the next 12 months or so.
And this one is from Valerie. Any chance of getting the Blu-rays of Trapped and The Man Who Cheated Himself released in Region 2?
I wouldn't be surprised. That has to do, I don't really have anything to do with that. You know, not The Man Who Too Late for Tears and Woman on the Run were both released overseas by Arrow. And I you know, once again, the pandemic has just played hell with everything. So I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing kind of happens, or that we make a deal with another outfit in Europe to release those films. You know, we'll see. But in the meantime, the amount of money it takes to do that, to release another version for another region, is a lot more money than it takes to buy a Region 2 player or a Region 1 player, I mean, and just play the films the way they are in this country.
Yeah, and you can get all region players too.
Yeah, of course.
And this is from Dennis. Bogart's courtroom drama "Knock on Any Door" was pretty noirish. Why isn't as widely seen as some of Bogey's other Santana productions? I would love to see it on Blu-ray.
That's actually a good question, because you know, it's a Nick Ray movie too that doesn't really get seen. I don't really like it, just to throw that out there. It's a little too much of a social problem film for me, and a court. I'm not huge on courtroom dramas. That's a weird movie because the courtroom drama stuff is the least of it. Like the weird romantic thing between Aline Roberts and John Derek is actually pretty good, which usually is the worst part of these films. I don't actually know the answer. I know that it's owned by Sony because it was released by Columbia originally. I'm pretty sure it came out like five or 6 years ago in a Humphrey Bogart box set from Columbia, which I guess, you know, that would have been like Dead Reckoning and In a Lonely Place and Knock on Any Door. I don't know what else was in that set, but so I don't know if it's coming out on Blu-ray, but it is intriguing that considering it's Bogart and Nick Ray, it it is odd that the film just doesn't really register. You know, it's not revived very often. It looks good. It's good cinematography.
And this is from Kevin, actually asking about when High Tide would be shown somewhere. So we've shown it, and you just said it's going to be coming out eventually. Is that right? Was that High Tide?
Yeah. Is Kevin? So Kevin's just asking when it's going to be on Blu-ray, or did he? Because does he know that he? I presume Kevin knows that we did restore the film.
Yeah, Eddie promised a revamped and restored version from the FNF years ago, and we in fact did do that.
It is done, yes.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. I like that movie very much, although there's a weird part of the film where I guess to make it fit the B movie running time, there's a weird jump narratively in that film where when we were doing the restoration, we kept questioning whether there was something missing in the film. Like, is there a scene missing here? Or is this just the way they opted to speed the plot along? You know? That stalled things for a little while. Like we were searching around for, can we find a script of this to see whether this was in the script this way? Or, anyway, now I've whetted Kevin's appetite even more. But it's a good movie, man. Lee Tracy. I love Lee Tracy, and this is like the only true noir that he made. And again, he's playing a newspaper man, right? That's all Lee Tracy ever played in the movies.
Yeah. I know, it's really weird he didn't do more of them, actually.
He was kind of persona non grata, you know, after his big run in the 30s, where he played in all those great fast talking newspaper man roles. And then he had do you know about his little incident in Mexico where he scandalized? They went down there to make Viva Villa, I think it was, like that. I think it's a Howard Hawks picture, like mid 30s. And you know, Lee Tracy was a big drinker, and he got drunk on the balcony of his hotel, and he urinated on a passing military parade of federales, and it created a huge scandal, like an international incident. And MGM really had to work hard to kind of cover this up. But that was sort of the beginning of the end for Lee Tracy, and he drank.
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny because in High Tide there is not a single scene in that movie where he is not drinking.
Yeah. Speaking of, are you gonna have your drink? Okay. Marty from Delaware. Eddie, do you ever work on or consult on film restorations other than film noir?
No.
Okay, that was easy.
Well, because let me just clarify. I am not a film restorationist in the sense of I am not capable technically of doing any of this kind of work. Yeah. So my job is I am a lobbyist, right? I raise the money. I shine the light. We should be working on this. That's the work I do, and I set it up and hand it over to the people who do the actual physical restoration work. So nobody needs me as a consultant on a restoration. What they need is me to go out there and beat the drum and raise the money to perform the restoration. And as of this point, I only do that for noir films. Somebody else should pick up the torch and go do it for other films, right? They can. I hope I set an example.
And this is from Nathan. Many fans are likely familiar with the influential early European crime-driven serials such as Le Vampire, Bad Thomas, and Fritz Lang's The Spiders. I am a sucker for the later low-budget serials of Republic. Republic studio director William Whitney, who directed the 1956 film noir A Strange Adventure. Question, did the 1930s and 1940s serial-focused American studios like Mascot and Republic make any meaningful contributions to the greater blended cocktail of film noir?
Interesting question. Wow, a William Whitney fan. That's a trip. Okay, well, Mascot Pictures definitely did not make a contribution because it was gone. You know, it was folded into Republic, as were a number of those, you know, all those studios that relied on having their film printed at Consolidated Film Industries. They all got folded into Republic because that was Herbert Yates ran that laboratory, and then he's the guy who ran Republic Pictures. So Mascot was folded into Republic, and you know, Mascot was probably most famous for the singing cowboy movies. You know, Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and all that stuff. Not too much noir that I know of. There's a film, I'm trying to remember the name of it, that they did that I've always wanted to see that I haven't seen yet, that Norman Foster was the star of, right? Before he became a director. Yeah, I can't remember the title. Ladies something or other. Slipping my mind now. But Republic, of course, was a real player. Republic produced some, what I would say were significant noir films, not just a B like Moonrise. You know, Frank Borzaghi's Moonrise. He ended up working at Republic in the late 40s. And, you know, to me, that movie is a masterpiece, and that's a Republic picture. You know, they did B-ish stuff like Lonely Hearts Bandits, which was the original Honeymoon Killers. If you know the movie with Tony LoBianco and Shirley Stoller, that 1950 Republic movie was the first version of that story of Ray Fernandez and Martha Beck, the killers. You know that. You know, there are a lot of other Republic Passkey to Danger and all this stuff, but I don't think there was a serial. I mean, The Whistlers, the only real noir serial that I can think of, but that was a Columbia thing, not Republic. But you know, that I hope that's some type of an answer. But Republic was a real player, and you know, that Republic did mostly genre pictures, you know, westerns and crime movies and things. Except, I'm sure there are other examples, but the one that sticks out for me is Moonrise, because even though we call that a film noir, that is not a genre picture. That was based on a very big, strong novel, and you know, some real effort went into that. It was an independent production that ended up at Republic.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film. And this is from Andy. Hi, Eddie, Ann, and feline colleagues. Eddie regularly refers to RKO as the House of Noir, and with the wild card influence of Howard Hughes, I'm sure there's a great story out there about the studio's rise and fall. Can Eddie recommend a definitive book or books on the subject? Via armchair sleuthing, I found that Richard B. Jewell's 2-volume history seems like a good place to start, but are there any other books, especially noir or B unit focus, that he would recommend?
Well, I have my, you know, invaluable to me are all of the studio biographies that were part of a series, these big oversized books, you know, the MGM story, the Columbia story, the RKO story, the Warner Brothers story. You can find those online, you know, through eBay or Bibliophile or whatever it is, Abe Books or whatever. And I would definitely get the RKO one, because not only does it tell you every single thing that was made there, but every year it goes by year and has everything that was happening at the studio, all the behind the scenes stuff that was happening at the studio, who was in charge, you know, all that stuff. And at RKO, there was a lot. In the 40s, there was a lot of changeover. I mean, a lot of different people were in charge, you know, before Howard Hughes came in, you know, Peter Rathbun and Charles Corner and all these very significant players. But if you want to know the Hughes story, I highly recommend the new book, Karina Longworth's book about Howard Hughes, Seduction. You know, Karina is fantastic, one of the great Hollywood historians today, And she does that podcast, You Must Remember This.
Great
And
podcast.
and wrote this terrific book about Howard Hughes in Hollywood. So those are the two books that I would recommend. He already knows about Jules' book, so this will round everything out.
And this is from David. From what I have read, Robert Mitchum seems to be a pretty liberal fellow, but recent quotes I have read have me perplexed. In an interview with Squire, he hinted that he was a Holocaust denier, and then I read. Then David read a couple things in IMDb bio that kind of followed up on that. So his question is, was Mitchum anti-Semitic?
Okay, my advice on this is believe nothing you read on the internet, number one.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know the answer to that, but do I need to know the answer to that? I don't know. One thing I do know about Robert Mitchum is that I would never take anything he says too seriously, because I don't know if there was another actor in Hollywood that played with interviewers the way Mitchum did.
No.
I was going to use a different word that is far more appropriate, but he suffered doing interviews unless he was really loaded, and then do you believe what he says? I mean, if he's sober, he's going to be really quick and contentious and combative, and will just say anything to screw with an interviewer. If he's drunk, then he's going to say anything, and how do you even know if he means it or not, right? So my suggestion is to take it all with a grain of salt. Don't stop watching Robert Mitchum movies because you read something on IMDb that may or may not be true.
Advice to take to heart about anyone. And this is from Phil. I recently watched a minor Bogart film, Black Legion, about a blue-collar auto worker who joins a KKK-like secret society, and then just watched an episode of my favorite TV series, Route 66, in which Dan O'Hurley plays a George Lincoln, Rockwell-esque American first fanatic who tries to organize native-born whites. Given the tenor of today, could a film be made about the Proud Boys and the current militia movement, or in this day and age would such a movie be a non-starter? If Black Legion could be made in 1937, what about similar powerful remake being made in 2021?
Interesting question. First off, I'm not being contentious, but I'm just going to say that I don't really think Black Legion is a minor film. I mean, it's a small film, but it's not a minor film because Warner Brothers went way out on a limb making that film. And it's really powerful. It's a really good movie. Obviously a film like this could be made today, and there are films like it that kind of fly under the radar. You probably remember, I'm going to draw a blank on the title. You may be able to help me. About 20 years ago, there was a film made, a thriller made in this country about this exact thing. There were none of these labels were attached, but Tom Berenger played. It was a Costa Gavras movie, and Deborah Winger and Tom Berenger. She falls in love with a guy who's he's a member of the Klan.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Was it Betrayal? Does that sound right? Betrayal or Betrayed or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
So that was
Betrayal, I think.
Betrayal, yeah. It's good. And the movie that I think I really want to revive this film because it was so far ahead of the curve with what's happening in the country now that in time, this film will become historically significant because people will recognize that it was probably the first quote unquote contemporary film to identify this underground movement and make it the basis of a film. And that is a movie called Arlington Road, with Jeff Bridges and Tim Robbins. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I have not.
But it is a hardcore noir film where Jeff Bridges becomes suspicious that his next door neighbor is fostering a right-wing white supremacist conspiracy plot against the government, and nobody will believe him.
Yeah.
And Tim Robbins, think about that, right? That's the modern day equivalent of Robert Ryan playing all these racists in the old days. Is Tim Robbins, one of the most high profile liberals in Hollywood.
Yeah.
He plays the white supremacist ringleader.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very scary performance. And this is one of the great Jeff Bridges movies that nobody talks about. And it is not a cop-out. This movie does not, it is hard noir. It has a very, very grim ending. And I really think people need to know about this movie. It's just fallen totally off the radar.
And this is from Doug. Lately, Noir Alley has been showing films that relate to current issues, like The Killer Stalked New York and Native Son. Now there's been proven that the Russians tried to influence the 2020 election in favor of Trump. Any chance of Noir Alley showing John Frankenheimer's 1962 film version of Richard Condon's The Manchurian Candidate?
Okay. Good work, Doug. You just got a whole political post from social media on Ask Eddie.
On Ask Eddie.
You snuck that in there. That was very good. I would not hesitate to show The Manchurian Candidate at a Noir City festival. I do consider it to be a film noir of a certain variety. I'd show it on a double bill with something like The Parallax View.
Yeah.
It's political paranoia noir is what it is. TCM shows The Manchurian Candidate. So
a lot.
And I don't know that I would show it on Noir. Like, that's what I'm saying. I don't know that I'd show it on Noir Alley. And I try to keep the Noir Alley stuff as much as possible off Ask Eddie, because none of this is sanctioned by TCM, and I can't just a
reminder.
I can't really talk about programming decisions by the network. I can talk about stuff that I've already shown, but I shouldn't really talk about stuff that I haven't shown unless I know it's going to air. So that's my thing. I consider it to be to fit the profile of a political noir. I would show it at Noir City. I'm going to say right now it's doubtful that I would show it on Noir Alley. Not because it's political noir, just because it gets shown on the network otherwise. It would be like me showing, I don't know, Citizen Kane as a film noir, or something that's kind of borderline. Like, I doubt I would show. I think Sunset Boulevard is totally a film noir and a great movie. I probably would never show it on Noir Alley just because you're going to see it elsewhere on TCM,
Yeah, and I do really just want to throw in a quick recommendation. The novel it is based on is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
And it is really, really disturbing.
And speaking of Jeff Bridges and other political noirs, he also wrote a Winter Kills, which was a completely crazy movie that came many years later that Jeff Bridges is in, and it's that's another great political paranoia film noir.
Yeah. I kind of forgotten about that movie. Okay, this is from William.
Richard Condon. Richard Condon, by the way, is the author we're talking about.
Yeah. And this is from William. He has two questions. Dear Eddie and Ann, do either of you have a favorite noir chase scene, be it on foot, road, or rail?
How about you?
Honestly, Gun Crazy.
Yeah, okay.
I just
Yeah, of
remember
course.
you showed it at NOIR CITY. I had not seen it before. And when that scene was that sort of in sequence, I was mesmerized. I was just so mesmerized by that ending, that sequence at the end, when they're just disheveled and it's, oh God, it's so incredible.
It's funny. It's funny that I didn't think of that one immediately, considering that I've written a book about the making of the film.
Yeah.
But it's hard to beat that. And plus, you could almost argue that from the time they leave the carnival, it's one long chase scene.
Yeah.
The whole movie is one long chase scene. I mean, that's the way. And what's interesting about that is that was the big problem in the production of that movie, is that the way McKinley Cantor wrote the original screenplay, it didn't move. It wasn't a chase movie. And when Dalton Trumbo took over and rewrote the script, he turned the entire thing into one long chase scene, like Love on the Run. That's what it is. It's Lovers on the Run. It's the greatest Lovers on the Run movie. But like there's multiple, the robbery, you can't really say that the getaway from the bank robbery is a chase scene, although they're clearly being pursued, but it's a famous scene. But then when they flee from the meatpacking plant, that's another great chase scene. But you're right, the scene at the end, once they leave his sister's house and take off, it's extraordinary. And Peggy is so great in that, because she just gives it her all. She's just falling and running and falling and face first in the mud, and it's fantastic. So I'm going to go along with you on that one. Yeah, it's got to be gun crazy.
And then his second question for us is, what is the most ingenuous or imaginative death scene depicted in noir? Thanks for all the knowledge and the fun.
Yeah, that has to be ingenious death scene.
Yes, I'm sorry. It is ingenious. Thank you.
And ingenuous. That's a very ingenuous death scene. Okay, no. I should know this. And it seems to me like, there should be one that just pops into my mind. But I always remember the death scenes that are the most emotionally affecting, not the most clever.
Yeah.
It's like so I don't know. This is kind of tough one for me. Do you have one that pops to mind?
No, I mean, oddly, this question, it really, for some reason, like it was Ivy, even though it's not exactly like a death scene, but just the whole process of the scheme she has about poisoning her husband and framing her lovers, and she go after this third guy, and like just is it Patrick Knowles that plays her husband?
I believe so. Yes.
Because he's so in love with her, because she basically says, "Oh, you should divorce me because I'm in love with someone else." But he loves her too much. He's so trusting of her. It's just like, for some reason, that's the thing that popped in my head, even though it's not particularly like imaginative, other than it's this great scheme that she has. But it's just something about that film. Like when I think about death, I think about that film.
But and it's too bad, because it's not a easily seen movie.
Yeah.
So a lot of people watching this now are like, wow, okay. But you didn't say what it was. You didn't say in how she dies, which is good, because people won't know, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm also a little hesitant a couple of ideas have come to me now, and I'm hesitant to say them because I don't want to spoil the end of the movie, right? No, you didn't spoil it, because I mean, look, it's a film noir, right? And she's the villain, so you got a 50-50 shot that she's either getting arrested or dying. Right? But I'm gonna move on from this question, just because I'm afraid I'm gonna spoil something if I say what I'm gonna say, because people haven't seen the movie, and I hate to spoil the movie. You'd be amazed, Anne, how many emails I get from people telling me not to spoil the endings of the films I introduce on Noir Alley when I have never once done that. I have never once, I don't discuss the plots, but it's so weird that people believe that the movie is being spoiled when you say anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, no, stop. I don't want to know. So these people are now conditioning me, you know. Anyway, let's go. Let's go on.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just say high wall elevator. So
there's a few elevators. There's
Yeah,
a few
I have-
elevators. The big
Yeah.
clock, the big
Yeah.
clock has an elevator death as well, you know. So we'll
definitely
leave it there.
elevators. And this is from Michael. Being a fan of both, I've always felt James M. Cain's books would have been excellent source material for an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Cain wrote stories involving the conflict and relationships, often between three people. With Notorious, Hitchcock showed he could develop suspense from a triangle relationship. Recently, Eddie said that the one book he wished could be made into a film noir was Cain's, how do you pronounce that?
Galatea.
Galatea. Does Eddie think Hitchcock would have been a good director for such a movie? If not, then who would he select to direct, and who would he pick to play Duke, Holly, and Val?
Huh, that's interesting. I don't think that book is the kind of material that would have interested Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would have been a good match. And I assume he's asking me who among classic directors would have been good for that material. You know, I obviously Robert Siodmak is my first choice for everything. But I, you know, there are a lot of really good people who could have made something out of that. Fritz Lang would have been a good director for that story. What's interesting about that book, and I don't want to go into it in any huge detail, but the first time I read that novel, I was certain that the protagonist, in a nutshell, the story is about a rich guy and his kept wife who is grotesquely overweight. And a guy comes to work on his property who's an ex-boxer that he hires to do work. And a thing develops between the two, just like Postman Always Rings Twice. It was Cain doing Postman Always Rings Twice yet again. But in this case, the thing that's really interesting is that the guy, the boxer who knows all about discipline and physical shit, convinces the woman that she can get back to who she was. Yeah. And he like puts her on a training regimen. And then she little by little becomes this sexual monster. And that leads to all the trouble, right? So he's doing it because the guy is like, I want my wife back. But then when he gets the wife back, the wife is in love with the guy who trained her.
Yeah.
You know, when I read that book, I always saw the boxer as black.
Yeah.
Right. And he's not. But I said, man, if you made this movie today, that would be the way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, because then you automatically get there's subtext that is no longer subtext. It's the text, right?
Yeah.
And it would be in a, you know, Oscar bait role for the woman.
Yeah.
Because she'd be doing, you know, a De Niro as Jake LaMotta, where, you know, she, in the beginning of the film, she's like 260 pounds, and then she loses 100 pounds in the, you know, or more in the course of the story. And it's really fascinating. So I don't know who would play it. I always say Amy Adams because I think she's so great, and that I just like the idea of Amy Adams playing difficult stuff because she seems so sweet and nice. But you know, when I saw her in American Hustle and you know, Arrival, which is a movie I love, you know, she was wasted in Nocturnal Animals, but you know, I could definitely see her doing something like this. And then of course, If you made that character a black guy, take your pick.
Yeah.
There are only like 60 great African American actors working today. It's unreal. This guy I just saw One Night in Miami, and I gotta say, I'm embarrassed. I don't know the actor's name, but the guy who played Cassius Clay / Muhammad Ali was freaking extraordinary in that movie. It was like I thought I was watching Ali. That guy was amazing. So I'd cast him in this role.
And I agree with Amy Adams. Plus, I think she just has a classic look, so I can always see her in period stuff. And I really want to read this book now. Actually, it's one of the Kane books I haven't read.
It's good. I mean, I consider it like one of his 5 best books.
Oh wow, yeah.
Right?
Then I'm definitely going to read it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from Daniel. I recently watched a video clip of Elisha Cook Jr., who I always now call Cookie, by the way, being interviewed in the 1980s. He said that Stanley Kubrick wanted him to appear in the movie Lolita, but he wasn't allowed to do it because he wasn't a big enough star in the UK. Was this really a policy back then, and did it go back into the 1940s and 50s too? Did you think this was good or bad for their films?
I'm going to say the same thing with this question that I said about the Mitchum question. Take it all with a grain of salt, even when it's coming from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what part in Lolita that Elijah Cook would have played.
Yeah.
But that was a thing, quota films and all that stuff, and that American actors would go to England to make movies. That's Victor Mature and The Long Haul. Barbara Payton went there and made several movies in the early 50s.
Yeah, Dury did a couple too.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it was a real thing, but clearly the British were like, well, we want stars.
Yeah.
And in no way is Elijah Cook a star.
Yeah.
He's just a character actor, So
yeah.
I have no reason to disbelieve what he's saying, because I would totally accept that if it were true, but I also know that actors sometimes say, oh, they wanted me to play that part. And, who knows if it's true or not, but it's interesting. That's it. I'm going to be on the lookout for more info about that.
And this is from Paul. First and foremost, I just wanted to thank you guys for these wonderful live streams. I look forward to them immensely as I sit down with my own libation. Thank you. So 2 questions. Is there a book or books you could recommend in and around the life of Raymond Chandler, a bio on his life and writing, or his relationship with Hollywood?
There's a lot of them. I remember reading Frank McShane's biography of Chandler years ago. I mean, that biography must be, 50 years old now, 45 years old, because I read it when I was a teenager. There's all the books about Chandler in Hollywood. The Judith Freeman book that was about his relationship with his wife, Sissy. The McShane biography felt to me like probably the best one, because Judith Freeman's book was interesting, but there was a little bit of a conceit to it, that she invested so much of herself in the book that it was sometimes distracting to me. But she did glean a lot of really insightful things about Chandler's relationship with Sissy that was really interesting. So I mean, those are the 2. It was her book was called The Long Embrace, I believe, and then McShane's was just, I think, just the life of Raymond Chandler.
Okay, and also I know that Eddie enjoys a nice cocktail during these live streams. Could you let us know what he's drinking on occasion, just for inspiration, so I would know what to prepare myself for the next time I sit down for one of these wonderful episodes?
That was a Brooklyn cocktail, which I'm actually, working on a cocktail book. So the Brooklyn I made in honor of Barbara Stanwyck, because, you know, from Brooklyn. Ruby Stevens, yep, from Brooklyn. So that is rye whiskey, dry vermouth, Amar-Picon orange liqueur, and maraschino liqueur, and a cherry, and a Luxardo cherry. That's what that cocktail was. So it's gone now.
Yeah.
Can't share it with you. It's gone now.
Sounds good. I had chamomile tea. This is from Michael. Since he's a noted mixologist, does Eddie have any guesses to what drink George Sanders is mixing for Ida Lupino and himself at the restaurant table and while the city sleeps? It appears he's shaving something round in the cocktail glass before pouring in the liquor.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at it again. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But that's funny because while the city sleeps, all I think about in terms of alcohol in that movie is the scene where Thomas Mitchell, Dana Andrews, and Ida Lupino are in the bar and they're all drunk.
Yeah.
They're all clearly drunk on camera. And it's like, wow, that is amazing. Thomas Mitchell, of course. I mean, he was always a big drinker. Dana Andrews was right in the midst of his downfall. Because the booze was really getting him, and Ida could handle her liquor, but I think she was just feeling something for her co-star and was like, I'll keep up with him so he doesn't embarrass himself, and then we'll all be in trouble. We'll all be sent to the principal's office, and it won't just be Dana, you know. So
yeah,
that's pretty good of her. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, even though in her later years, she really developed an alcohol problem.
Oh, God, yes. She and Howard Duff. I mean, not good.
Yeah.
You know, and what's sad is, you know, the boozing is not. I like drinking. I don't like getting drunk, and it's hard in Hollywood. Everybody at that era seemed to be a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
And it was really hard on the women because, you know, you only got so long if you're an actress, and booze does not help. Mm-hmm. And there is no way that booze is good.
Yeah.
If you want to maintain your look. So God love her, Ida moved behind the camera where that wasn't as important, but you can see, like in the 50s, you can see the alcohol on her. You can see it on Dana Andrews. Yeah. I mean, I mean, God forbid, Barbara Payton. I mean, that was quick. I mean, she went from the hottest thing in Hollywood to bloated alcoholic in like 5 years.
Yeah.
That's tragic. So anyway, that's not the answer to the question about what George Sanders was making, and that, you know, I'll go back and review that and see if I can figure it
out. Also, has Eddie ever had occasion to talk with Drew Barrymore about her father's work in noir films, The Big Night and While the City Sleeps?
No, I've never met Drew Barrymore. She is beloved at TCM. Everybody loves her. When she did The Essentials, I think she may have been the first co-host of The Essentials with Robert Osborne, and apparently really knew her stuff, and is very a very, very likable person. I'm sorry to say I haven't had the opportunity to have that proven to me.
This is from Chuck. Sidney Greenstreet. I love this actor. Eddie, what was the exact occasion and relationship that got him cast in the Maltese Falcon? I know he established on Broadway, but who was it? His agent, John Huston, seeing Greenstreet on stage? Another friendship? I'd love to think it was an all-night drinking session that did it.
That's amusing. I love Sidney Greenstreet too. Can you believe how short his career was? His movie career, right?
Yeah.
First movie was released in 1941. He was dead in 1954. I mean, that was quick. I hate to disappoint Chuck, but I don't believe there was anything special about his being cast. I mean, the special thing about Greenstreet is that he made his movie debut when he was 61 years old or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a stage actor, and he mostly worked in England. I mean, he's from England, right? He's from Sandwich in Kent. And, but I hate to say this, and I don't mean to be flip or anything, but the character is called the Fat Man.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure when his agent found out there was a movie being made with a character called the Fat Man, they said, Sidney, I think we got your breakout role right here, right? I mean, who's it going to be? Do you see Eugene Pallette playing Casper Gutman? Do you see Lionel Barrymore as Casper Gutman? I don't think so. I mean, one look at Sidney Greenstreet and it's done. You know, I'm trying to remember who played Gutman in the original one. Was it Edward Arnold? I think Edward Arnold may have played the character. I honestly can't remember.
I can't remember either, but
somebody on this,
it would have been.
Yeah, somebody on this live stream will answer that question. You know, I could look online right now, but that was it. I'm sure it was just Sidney Greenstreet was immense.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it's like David Lynch, you know, he never has a casting call or anything. He just looks at photographs.
Yeah.
And he says, that's the girl, you know. And I'm sure John Huston just took one look at Sidney Greenstreet and said, that's my high living, globe-trotting treasure hunter. There he is. I mean, who else would you cast just looking at him?
Yeah,
So,
and I think Greenstreet also just had that like sophistication and worldliness that just made him perfect for it. I honestly could not imagine another person playing that character. I really can't. He was perfect for it.
It's the best cast movie maybe ever. I mean, it's not a huge cast, but like all those characters are iconic. They are iconic, right? Bogart is Sam Spade. That's like the start of noir. That was just a revelation. And I do not understand people who criticize Mary Astor in that role. She is perfection in that part. And, you know.
And she's sexy.
She's totally sexy. She's totally sexy. And she's a liar. She's a duplicitous liar. And she is great at it, you know. And everybody in that movie is perfect. But Greenstreet does the thing that is so difficult as an actor, and this is where he completely becomes that character, is that turn he does from this is it, we finally have the bird after all these years, and he hacks at it, and then it's not, and then it only takes him about 20 seconds to go, well, you know, time to get back on the road and go out, you know, and it's like, man, that was like.
And that whole interchange with Joel Cairo too, where he's like, oh, you know, stop crying. He goes, really? You're going to keep going? The two of them are just going to friggin' go, you know? I love it.
I totally agree. Sidney Greenstreet is one of the greatest character actors in movie history. No question.
Okay. Charles and his mall Rachel would like to know, we want to know, when did the pronunciation of homicide changed from homicide to homicide? Early black and white movies pronounce it home. It's always odd tests. Homicidal.
Yeah, we just talked about homicidal the other day. That's weird. I mean, nice question. I mean, that's totally out of left field.
Yeah.
I, of course, have absolutely no idea. Americans have a fabulous way of, you know, altering the pronunciation of things just for the hell of it, you know.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that with absolutely no basis in anything, that maybe it had something to do with when people, you know, because when I was in school, right, it was like I remember how stupid kids were, and people would rush up to you because they just learned this crap, and they would say, "Are you a Homo sapien?" Are you a Homo sapien? Right? And with the stress on the Homo sapien. And oh, you mean you're not a human being? And they thought this was so fucking clever. Oh, sorry. So clever. And I'm going to assume that maybe it has something to do with that. Like homicide, you're avoiding that altogether. Like homicide, like you're not, you know, that brings maybe for some people some other connotation into it. I don't know. It's the only thing I can imagine. Right?
Yeah.
I'd love to ask David Simon, right, who created the show Homicide, Life on the Street. I'd love to ask him, like, how do you pronounce the title of your show?
Yeah.
Right? And then that would answer it for me once and for all.
There you go.
But here you go. I'll answer it myself.
Okay.
Craig Rice, the great crime novelist, humorist crime novelist, wrote a novel called Home Sweet Homicide. Right? There's no pun in the title if you pronounce it Home Sweet Homicide.
Yeah.
See? So it's homicide. Home Sweet Homicide. So there you go. That's all. Just wanted to throw that in.
As long as you're sure. This is from Bill. I was wondering if Eddie has been contacted about doing a masterclass.
No.
No.
I do subscribe to the masterclass thing though, and I've watched a number of them.
No.
It's fun, but I watch ones about cooking and about gardening and about building things. Don't tell David Mamet I've never watched his master class on how to write. You know, it's like, okay, whatever. I don't.
Do you actually do carpentry at all?
I have done some carpentry. Yeah. I love to fix things.
Yeah.
Right. It's like if something, it's almost like I'm not going to say I've broken things intentionally just to have the chance to fix them. But if I hear like something break in the house, I'm like, oh, what was that? I don't get angry. It's like, what was that? Can I fix it?
No, it's funny because my ex, I asked him, I just wanted him like to get them all out of my bathroom, and then I just wanted to paint sort of the detail parts, like the little insets in the doors and stuff. And we have progressed from there. It's like he keeps finding more and more things to do to my bathroom, which looks fantastic.
Great.
But it's so hilarious because we, it's just like he's that way of just being like, once he starts in on something, then no, this looks bad now, so now I want to make this look better for you. And then he gets really into it, which is nice for me.
Okay, really quick, I want to just throw this out. One of the things that has really helped get me through the pandemic is this wonderful TV show from England called The Repair Shop.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen this?
No.
No, and it's the most wonderful, life-affirming show. So I highly recommend it. I parcel it out. I don't want to binge watch it because I know there's a finite number of these things, and it makes me so happy because it's about this little barn in the middle of the English countryside where all of these craftspeople fix things.
Yeah.
And people bring them their cherished possessions that are beat to hell, like all played out. And it's, and then it just follows these incredibly great artisans and craftsmen and everything, like upholstery, leather work, paint, restoring paintings. There was a woman who brought in like an old butter churn that was just rusted and looked like hell. And you learn like this is how a butter churn works. And then there's all this investigative, for somebody who does this with films, it's really interesting to see it done with physical objects, like an incredibly intricate dollhouse that was just ruined, and they brought it, and this woman like rebuilt the whole thing, or a guy. It was the guy. Will was the guy who does the woodworking. Anyway, I love that show. It kind of moves me to tears every time I watch it because it's like keeping the past alive. And the work that these people do is so extraordinarily intricate there's a guy who does anything that's mechanical, like the little tiny gears and a watch and stuff, and he'll bring a watch back to life. Man, I love that stuff. It's very inspiring. Yeah. That's kind of stuff I like to do. Like, let me see if I can make this live again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. My dad actually did woodworking. And so he started making us beds, and he said, go through all my woodworking magazines, pick out a bed. So I picked this beautiful, it's called a Japanese cloud rise bed. And so when I showed it to him, it didn't have any specs. So he had like to create his own specs for it. And then he made it with cherry. So he had to, because there's a slight slanting on the headpiece, you know, like you see in Japanese temples and stuff. So he had to like to practice on basically what he could waste to get that right. And then it's so funny because for the cloud, which is just this round piece that goes on the headboard, it was actually a piece of Brazilian rosewood. So it's like, you know, and that bed is just beautiful. And now that he's gone, you know, I have this part of him with me forever. And it's so meaningful to me to have that bed.
You need to watch this show.
I do. It sounds really, really good. So this is from John. The question of a comic noir has come up several times. Though I prefer the British ending, does the American ending of Kind Hearts and Cornets, where the doomed destiny of our intrepid serial killer hero is made certain, ensure noir status of this film?
I haven't really thought about that one too much, but you know that I've shown the Lady Killers at Noir City, so I guess Kind Hearts and Coronets. Why would I distinguish between them? You know, so you know, I don't think any of the comedy noirs, I don't actually bestow noir status on them. I just recognize that they are, they're part of the whole noir thing, because they're like making fun of it, you know, they're having fun with it. Let's put it that way. So, you know, sure. That's my answer for that one.
Let's see. I also nominate the historic noir consideration for the 1950 historic noir, which we've talked about previously. Consideration for the 1951 French film The Red Inn, where Ferdinand plays a priest who is told in confession by the matron of a remote and crowded inn that she and her husband and the staff intend to rob and kill all the patrons that night. Have you seen that?
I have not seen that.
It sounds really good. I need to see that. And also, it's also really strange because there's a Hong Kong film called The Green Inn, where at this end they're killing people and putting them into the meat pies. So it's kind of funny that the titles are so similar.
I wonder if there's a connection between the movies, but
I don't know.
But thank you for that. Thank you for that question that I have no answer for, because you just steered me toward a film that I have not seen. So
yeah, I really want to see that too.
The Red Inn. Okay.
The Red Inn. Okay. Francesca saw the funny film noir Mr. Soft Touch with Glenn Ford after Eddie mentioned it. Could you suggest more comedy noirs? Well, we just got two.
Yeah, you just got two. That's funny. And you know, Mr. Soft Touch is weird because it's like half a comedy and half a drama, directed by two different directors, right? Henry Levin and Gordon Douglas co-directed it, and I think they kind of split I think Henry Levin directed the funny business and Gordon Douglas directed the serious business, but it's odd. Obviously, Unfaithfully Yours is the best of all the comedy noirs. And I love The Good Humor Man with Jack Carson, which I've discussed many times on these broadcasts, because that was a straight noir story that Frank Tashlin just turned into a comedy by taking the protagonist and making him a good humor man. By just giving him a funny job, but keeping everything else about the story straight, he turned it into a very funny comedy. I know there are others. I'm obviously we mentioned, you know, the Lady Killers and Kind Hearts and Coronets, and I know there are others that I'm drawing a blank on right now, but I'm kind of looking at my clock on the laptop, and it's like I swore we'd get through 30 questions tonight, and I don't know where we are. So let's see.
Okay. We'll see how far we can go because that was 21, so we might still make it.
Let's see if we can do this.
Okay, Aaron asks, I recently watched Fool's Parade on CCM based on a later book by David Grubb. It had many David Scrub. It had many similar North themes. For me, it didn't gel, neither fish nor fowl, but apparently the novel was similar. What's Eddie take on it? A rare noir comedy?
This is, have you consolidated these to be the noir comedy section? Okay.
We did the political stuff up top. Now we're doing the noir comedies.
Okay, very, very clever. I have not seen the movie. Nor have I read the book. So this is a great episode for me personally, because I'm learning stuff from the people who watch. So yeah, Fool's Parade. I'm gonna have to check that out. Davis Grubb, Night of the Hunter is the only thing by Davis Grubb that I know. It's the only thing that I've read. So I don't know this movie or the book that it's based on, but I will check it out. So I thank this person for the question, even though I'm letting them down by not giving an opinion. But I don't want to give an opinion if I haven't seen something.
This is from Joe. Growing up in the 60s, I only knew the name Hal Wallace as the producer of the Elvis movies. Then when I became a film noir fan, I couldn't help but notice he produced a number of well-known film noirs. Is there anything you can tell us about the man? He seems to have quite a lengthy career as a producer.
I'm not going to do Hal Wallace justice with this answer, because Hal Wallace is one of the major film producers in Hollywood history. He was head of production at Warner Brothers in the 30s. Incredibly important to Warner's in the 30s and the whole film noir movement in the 40s, when he left the studio and went independent. And as this gentleman has noted, if it is a gentleman, has noted, is responsible for a lot of really crucial noir titles. He produced I Walk Alone. He produced Sorry Wrong Number. He produced Desert Fury. Yeah. And then in the 50s, he kind of waned. He produced a lot of Elvis movies. Noir people know him because he was Elizabeth Scott was his mistress. Huh. And he's vitally important. I don't want to go into all kinds of personal background stuff, but I'm just acknowledging that I'm going to say, Jerry Wald, Mark Hellinger, Hal Wallace, Joan Harrison. I'm sure there's a few producers I'm leaving out there, but those producers were hands-on, and they had a real affinity for noir, as opposed to like producers who worked for the studio and did everything. I mean, these are like four producers that I would say are essential and don't get enough credit where noir is concerned, and Hal Wallace is definitely one of them.
This is from Ron. I find the Bunker Hill area fascinating. I wonder how noir directors and directors of photography would have made their movies without it. Would they have stayed on the backlots or gone further afield to find that gritty down on your luck look around Los Angeles?
There wasn't any place else to find it in LA.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it. Bunker Hill was downtown LA, right? There isn't much to downtown LA. I mean, it's all in a very, very contained area. So that was where you were going to go if you wanted, if you wanted to shoot, noir is an urban thing. If you wanted to shoot the urban thing, you went downtown. And, yeah, Bunker Hill is a pretty fascinating area. It's sad that there's like, I don't know how to talk about that, because it's disappointing that it's all gone, but it's understandable because it fell into such disrepair.
Yeah.
Because once upon a time at the beginning of the century, Bunker Hill was like where the bankers and the elite lived. And then they all moved out to the hinterlands. They moved out to Pasadena and all that, and kind of left Bunker Hill, as in most American cities at that time, to the underclass. And it was so extraordinary because architecturally, so much of the fabulous stuff that the rich people had built remained, but now it was just poorer people living in it.
Yeah.
So you saw all these majestic Victorians that were like down on their luck, and it made it really interesting. It made it a super interesting location, in addition to Angel's Flight, the trolley and all that stuff. And the fact that it was like a hill in LA, right? LA is not known for its hills.
Yeah.
And here was a hill that it was so steep you couldn't walk up. You had to take a funicular trolley one block up the hill. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating area. Hey, books have been written about it. That's how fascinating it is.
There's a book on it. Yeah. And I was just gonna say too, and it's nice because if you go to LA, you can still take Angel's Flight.
Yeah.
It's running still. So
indeed it is. I took it, not long before the pandemic. I actually was able to get back on it, and it's right across from the Grand Central Market, which is a really great place to buy food and eat and and then you go through the Grand Central Market, and then you're on where the $1 Million Theater is, which is a remarkable building, and William Mulholland had his offices. Water and Power was on the top of that building, and then the Bradbury Building, which is known from so many noirs, is right across the street, right on the corner across the street. So it's a little mini noir tour that you can do right there.
Yeah. Okay. This is from Alan. Recently, I saw Five Against the House. Seemed to be filmed on location. Was it? And what do you think of Brian Keith as an actor? Was this his best noir film?
Oh man, yes, filmed on location in Reno. Not the exteriors, filmed on location in Reno. The interiors, no. And Brian Keith is great. I mean, it's I'm sure like me, you knew Brian Keith first from his TV stuff, where he was doing what's the thing he did? Courtship of Eddie's Father, right? That wasn't that Brian Keith on TV? Courtship of Eddie's Father, or no, Family Affair.
Family Affair, yeah.
Family Affair. That was it. Family Affair with Kathy Garver, my buddy Kathy Garver playing Sissy. Family Affair. I don't know why I goofed that up. With Sebastian Cabot.
Yeah, and, who has a little fling with Ida Lupino. They have 2 episodes that Ida Lupino is on, playing someone from Zest.
But I kind of, and then Brian Keith, before I saw any of his noir stuff, I knew Family Affair, and then I saw him play Teddy Roosevelt in The Wind and the Lion. John Milius is The Wind and the Lion. Fantastic. Love that movie. Love him in that movie. Then I saw all the noir stuff that he did in the 50s. And that was kind of a revelation, because it's and it's the 2 Phil Carlson movies, Tight Spot and Five Against the House. He's even better in Tight Spot than he is in Five Against the House. And then he did Nightfall with Jacques Tourneur, which he's one of the great noir villains in that movie. Him and Rudy Bond play the two bank robbers on the trail of Aldo Ray, and he's sensational in that movie. Yeah,
he's really frightening. And I guess for me, the thing that I saw him in, kind of that I was, realized he was more than what I had seen on TV, was Reflections in a Golden Eye.
Yeah.
Which I think is a terrible movie in a lot of ways. But I actually thought he gave the best performance in that film.
Yeah, he was
incredible in it.
And it's interesting because I love the way he plays a villain, because he does it, you know, it's the opposite of like the Widmark style. He's lazy. Brian Keith is like, he hates people so much that he's just, oh man, you know, he's just so laconic and like, oh, Red, are you gonna kill, you know, don't kill him yet. You know, it's like he just doesn't get excited about any of it. He's blasé about the most evil things, and that makes it spot on. And you know that his dad is Robert Keith, who is the cop in Woman on the Run. I mean, he was in a lot of movies, but that's his dad, was also an actor and a playwright, Robert Keith. So it's a family affair.
Yeah, and I think too, the thing that you sort of realize too when you see him play, and especially for me in Nightfall, was he's big. Like, I don't think I ever quite, because when he's playing someone nice, you know, it feels cuddly, but then when you see him playing someone really dangerous, it's like a bear. You know, it's like, oh, you're really big.
Precisely. Precisely. And he doesn't have to do much to be physically intimidating. You know, yeah, he is just insane. Which is why Milius casting him as Teddy Roosevelt was like completely inspired, because when he puts the glasses on and the whole thing, I mean, he is like a big bear. He's fantastic. Okay, Brian Keith appreciation post. It was good.
Yeah, I know, man. This is from Steve. The noir movement left obvious impacts on most aspects of filmmaking, such as story, cinematography, and set design. But I'm curious on the impact it made on film editing during the period. Other than uses of nonlinear storytelling, flashbacks, and quick jarring juxtapositions, were there any other editing techniques that emerged during the era?
Interesting question. I am going to put a little caveat on this question by saying flashbacks are not an editing decision. They're a writing decision, okay? Because there's really not a lot of films that become told in flashback in the editing room. They're conceived as flashbacks by the screenwriter, and that's kind of how that starts, you know? Like a movie like The Locket is not made in the editing room. It's made on the page by the writer. But having said that, it is very interesting to note that the initial wave of noir directors were guys trained in set design, art direction, cinematography. That was that whole UFA school, you know, the Premingers and Siad Max and Fritz Lang, and that was one era. The second wave, which is sort of Don Siegel, Phil Carlson, Joseph Lewis, they were editors. They were film editors. Robert Wise, perfect, yeah, film editors. So they had a different approach to telling the story because they thought more like cutters. You know, there's more editing in their movies than you would see. Like if you watch a Preminger movie, there's almost no editing. If he could, he would have shot, if they had steady cams back then, Preminger would have directed the movies in like 12 shots.
Yeah.
That would have been it. You know, he just would have moved the camera constantly. Max Ophuls would have just, you know, same thing. It's like really subtle and elegant. Don Siegel, Phil Carlson, to some extent Sam Fuller, although he's not a film editor, you know, it was like pow, 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 you know, and, you know, Robert Wise is a combination of both. He's just super sophisticated.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting observation. I just know that that's the case. More film editors started gravitating to the director's chair. Mark Robeson was another one, like Robert Wise. So yeah, I think you just saw things change. And in the 50s, you notice that the films are more about the way they're cut and less about the way they look. So there's definitely something to this question. However, I don't necessarily think it's specific to film noir. I think that pretty much you could apply what I just said across the board for Hollywood movies, right? I mean, Robert Wise didn't just make noir. Mark Robeson didn't just make noir, you know? So yeah, there you go.
Okay. Hello, Ann, Eddie, and Feline Familiars. And here's the first question. Thankfully, through the efforts of the FNF and others, non-American film noir or film noir adjacents are often becoming newly accessible, running mood in a scene at all finality. But what, if anything, from the classic American period is still on the lam, eluding our grasp? Does there remain a holy grail of American film noir?
Interesting question. You know, I can't, it's not going to be a big movie. I mean, the grails come in two forms. There's the, wouldn't it be great to see a much better version of this movie, but the movie's not lost. And then there's the movie that you can't see. And like, wouldn't it be great to rescue that? Okay, so we found Woman on the Run and Too Late for Tears. You know, a lot of these movies that had disappeared to try and get, you know, all the stuff that we've restored. You know, something like Guilty Bystander, which was a lost film, Nicholas Winding Refn has restored that himself. And you can see it. You can see it for free on his website. You know, whatever, I can never remember what are his initials, right? NWR. So the website is bynwr.com.
Okay.
You can go there and you can see on your computer a beautifully restored version of Guilty Bystanders starring Zachary Scott. My friend Peter Conheim actually did that restoration. The one, and you know, obviously we have movies that we're looking to restore. This question says, is there a holy grail? You know, we're restoring the Argyle Secrets. Did I consider the Argyle Secrets to be the holy grail of noir? No, you know, it's not, but it's a film that should be restored. I guess for me personally, I would say it's a Republic picture. We had a Republic question earlier called The Pretender with Albert Decker, but it was the first noir film shot in this country by John Alton. And you really can't see a good print of The Pretender. So that's a film that I would love to find those materials and be able to do a really high quality restoration of that just because of John Alton.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I would like to see it too. Plus, you know, Albert Decker.
You never run out of stories to tell when Albert Decker is in a movie.
I know. I also, just as an act, I just find him really mesmerizing. I honestly do. Like, he's one of those people. I can't remember which film it is, but there's one film where he's like hiding from someone who's trying to kill him, but he doesn't like want his wife to know. And like, there's a scene like where he's in this closet just eating like food out of a can because
I think that may be The Pretender. You may have seen
Pretender. Yeah, it is The Pretender. Yeah. It's a great film. It would be nice to see a great print, but that scene with him just eating the food in the closet.
And he's, you know, his career, you know, he was in noir from the beginning. You know, he plays a dual role in Among the Living, which is an often overlooked early, you know, Gothic Southern noir. And you know, and then he's the villain. He's Big Jim Colfax in The Killers, and then he's the Mr. Big villain in Kiss Me Deadly. You know, he did this film, The Pretender. He shows up. You know, Dr. Cyclops, which is not film noir. Don't write in questioning.
We know that.
You know, but very, very interesting career. We won't go into his demise right now because it's too gruesome, and you can look it up on the internet. Okay.
And actually, it's also NOIR CITY magazine. We have a back issue that has an article about
there's a whole, Steve Cronenberg wrote a whole feature about Albert, the strange life and death of Albert Decker. Yeah.
So yeah, you can find that on NOIR CITY magazine's back issues. Okay. And then So Davey also asks, the Paul Kelly bit in Crossfire is among the filmic moments I ponder most. It is some kind of brilliant. The scene has added context and more notably menace when one recalls Kelly served a stretch in San Quentin for killing a man in a love triangle dispute over actress Dorothy McKay, which I had no idea about.
Really? You didn't know that? Okay. Yes, I'm just agreeing with what Dave is saying here. I love Paul Kelly, and for some perverse reason, because that's the way I am, I loved him even more when I found out that he had this insane backstory. Because he is one of the few actors who has actually achieved stardom after getting out of prison.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah, he really quick. I've told this story on Noir Alley even, but he was in a Broadway show with Dorothy McKay, I believe her name is pronounced, and had an affair with her. And then, you know, she was married. And then at one point, it just blew up, and he went over to her house and he got into a fist fight with her husband and knocked him unconscious. They were all really drunk, and they both went to jail. Both Paul Kelly and Dorothy McKay went to jail because the jury determined that she put them both to bed and didn't call an ambulance.
Yeah.
For her husband, and her husband died from complications of this beating. And then story's not over. So he goes to prison in San Quentin, he gets out, and he resumes a movie career. Dorothy McKay in prison writes a play that called Ladies They Talk About, which is produced, and she becomes a successful playwright. The movie's been adapted several times.
Yeah.
Right? And they get married. Paul Kelly and Dorothy McKay got married when they were both out of jail, and his stepdaughter witnessed him beating her father to death and accepted him as her new father because he, you know, I mean, it's an amazingly weird story, right? She was a witness as a young girl to her father's murder.
Wow.
Or her father's killing.
Manslaughter.
Yeah, they called it manslaughter because they were both so drunk that they said they didn't really know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Okay.
My God.
That was a long story, but
but I'm really happy because I've never heard that story, and that was amazing.
And he brings all of that to that scene in Crossfire, which is just such a profoundly unusual scene. It is one of my favorite scenes in all of film noir. Got any money on you? Got any money on you? That's fantastic.
And it's just, yeah, and that scene it's also, I think it's like the most unsettling thing, one of the most unsettling scenes I've ever seen in a movie. That scene it's unsettling because you don't, you know, you don't know what the hell's going on.
Well, they can't be, the production code, I don't think, would allow them to be specific about what the relationship was between Paul Kelly and Gloria Graham. Is he her pimp? Or like, what's going on here? And the fact that they wouldn't specify makes it even weirder. Like, who is this guy and what's he doing in her room? And what's this all about? And, you know, and he's like from another movie. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, we should move on.
Keep going. Okay. This is from Andrew. I really got a kick out of the article, 60-cent specials, detours to notable and not so notable American eateries by Nora Fiore, and that was in NOIR City magazine. That was our last issue, right?
I believe so.
Issue, which you'll be able to actually buy soon on our back issue site. I even laughed out loud at the description of how hamburgers from Lucky's Diner tasted. Is Nora planning on doing a follow-up piece on notable and not so notable hotels and rooming houses from film noir?
I'll be very quick about this, but if people have not read that story, that's one of my favorite things that's ever appeared in the NOIR City e-magazine. The new issue of which will be out probably by the time this airs.
Yeah, it'll be out when this is airing. So you'll be able to buy the other one. This one we're talking about will be our most recent back issue on our back issue site.
But Nora Fiore is phenomenal. She is a young woman who I don't know how she does it. I just sent her a note the other day saying this. You know, she lives way up in the Northeast somewhere. I know her because I met her at the TCM film festivals, and she is on social media under the handle Nitrate Diva. And I've just been so impressed by the stuff I see her posting. I asked her if she would write this feature for the magazine, and she did a spectacular job with it. She also did a feature on the noir connections to women's advertising in the 1940s. Like, she found all these examples of women's ads that looked like advertisements for noir films. Yeah. You know, ladies, how do you know he's being faithful? You know, and like the artwork and everything looked just like noir. And she did all this on her own. She did all this research and everything on her own. She's fantastic, and I hope she hope she writes for us forever. Yeah,
I'll be honest with you. I was super, super excited when you told me that she was going to be writing for us. You know,
she's great.
I mean, it was just like, wow. I was extremely happy. Okay, this is number 30. We made our goal. I appreciated and agreed with Eddie's comments in the March 11th installment, where he basically stated that noir is noir. The films need only to be differentiated, by the era in which they were produced. Bound is a film that has to be classified as noir, since the Wachowskis purposely threw in every film noir trope. Because of this twist in the relationship, I think the movie would be popular today with the rising empowerment of women in the LGBT community. Has Eddie ever shown Bound at NOIR City or introduced it on TCM?
No, although not for lack of trying. You know, it's very hard to get, it's difficult to get guests for the noir festivals at all now, because the original people from the classic era are all, you know, barely with us anymore, sorry to say. But the newer stars are working, you know, but I tried to do a screening of Bound in San Francisco, and I tried to get, you know, both of them. Yeah. You know, Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon. Gina Gershon has actually made a lot of, you know, quote unquote neo-noir films. And I think she would be a fabulous guest. She's actually come to the Noir City Festival in Hollywood a few times. Yeah. And I totally agree with this assessment of Bound as, you know, clearly, you know, if I was the studio head and they brought me that, all I would have had to have said was, it's like Raw Deal, but instead of the two women being after Dennis O'Keefe, it's like Claire Trevor and Gloria Graham, and they're the couple. And it's like, sold, I'm buying that. When do we go into production? Right. So, and I, you know, so I do like that movie. I wasn't totally sold on it was a little more violent, I thought, than it needed to be. Yeah. But big deal. That's, you know, that's how movies are now. But
and it was Marsha Hunt in Raw Deal.
No, I know it was Marsha Hunt, but
you just would like Gloria Graham to be with Claire Trevor.
Well, here's the deal. I did a thing one time. I even posted it on Facebook probably 5 or 6 years ago with that image. Yeah. Because there was an image I found from some film, or I built it, because I had these two shots of Claire Trevor and Gloria Graham that fit together perfectly. So I said, imagine Bound made in like 1949. Yeah. And it was Claire Trevor and Gloria Graham. and they were like in their lingerie, like looking longingly at each other, and it was great. So
sorry.
No, that's all. That's why I thought of those two actresses, even though I know that Marcia is the star of Raw Deal.
But I would like to say those two would have been awesome because, obviously Claire would be the Gina Gresham role. I think so. Anyway,
and I think you have written about both of them in the Noir City magazine. You've written about both Claire Trevor and Gloria Graham.
Yeah, I have, and also, and then another article separately on Raw Deal, because I love that movie profoundly because it's just all three performances are amazing, and I think besides being a noir story, it's also, I think, a very relatable story about love, and how we love someone, but they love somebody else, or they do love us, but not in the way they love this other person, and that kind of complexity. And it's really becomes about being the two women, and one of the women actually is the narrator, which is very unusual for that type of film, for the woman to literally.
Absolutely. I think the only other one is Kiss of Death, where Colleen narrates Kiss of Death, but it's Colleen Gray, but it's a totally different kind of narration. Yeah. She's like the objective voice of reason, whereas Claire Trevor gives that, which is really one of the best voiceovers in all of film noir, because she gives it such an immediacy, because she's telling you that this stuff like it's a secret between you and her.
Yeah.
Because she she whispers the whole thing. She does the whole voiceover like this. Joe. Why don't look at her, Joe? Look at me. She's fantastic. It's the most immediate voiceover narration I've ever heard. She does it perfectly, and nobody ever talks about it. They talk. Fred McMurray, Double Indemnity, Mitchum, Out of the Past, William Holden, Sunset Boulevard. These are like the great voiceover things. But Claire Trevor and Raw Deal, come on.
Because it's emotional. You know what I mean? It's the emotional aspect of what's going on, not that sort of. So because there's such an emotion to it, and what she's talking about is from this. It's not this crime-oriented or fact-oriented thing. It's the emotions of what are going on.
Well, it's fascinating because most voiceover narrations are the resigned, after-the-fact narration. If only I had known then that it was all going to go wrong. That's the Burt Lancaster narration in Crisscross, where he's basically telling, this is how I ruined my life, right? Yeah. But Claire Trevor's voiceover, it's happening. She's narrating it as it happens.
Yeah.
So she's telling you what's going on in her head as she's realizing that the love of her life is falling in love with somebody else. Like it's happening right in front of her face, and she's sharing it with you in these little asides. It's unique. It's totally unique in noir, and one of the reasons we both love Claire Trevor so much.
Yeah. I mean, she's just a tremendous actress. I mean, I hope that people will discover her more, since we've talked about her a lot. And then I think you've screened like Born to Kill, which I think will be a gateway drug, hopefully, for a lot of people into the wonder of Claire Trevor.
I think I've screened just about every one of her noir films. I think I've screened them all. I haven't screened Hoodlum Empire, which is like one of the only ones, a Republic picture, mind you.
Yeah.
I don't think I've screened that, but everything else, I think we've done it. Maybe not Borderline. I haven't screened Borderline.
Oh, it's so much fun. We can sneak it in on a Sunday.
Well, that's like a comedy noir in a sense.
It is
Comedy noir, yeah.
It's really actually very funny.
Her husband made that for her. As that was her follow-up to Key Largo, because Milton Bren, her husband, figured she needs like a starring role, not a supporting role.
Yeah.
And he was like reading the noir thing. It's 1949. It's like the peak of noir, and did Borderline. And it's kind of a forgotten movie, really.
No, I mean, yeah. I mean, I watched it because I was writing an article on her and I hunted down a copy, but I do recommend that film because there's just a scene where she's got, what's his name? The heavy, who was a heavy. He was
Raymond Burr.
Raymond Burr is like, she's like trying to get information on her. So she's like trying to kind of come on to him in this bar and he's like completely not interested. And it's
I know
she plays that
exactly the
scene
scene.
so well. She's just really has a flair for comedy too.
Well, I think that was another reason they did that film, is because most of the actresses that I talked to, and I did talk to Claire Trevor. I did actually have the opportunity. I never met her, but I did speak with her several times on the telephone. And most of those actresses wanted the opportunity to play comedy.
Yeah.
And, you know, Marie Windsor, Audrey Totter, you know, Claire Trevor, Jane Greer, dying to play comedy. Jane was the funniest woman I've ever known, you know, never really got to show it on screen. And so that was one of the reasons that Claire Trevor did Borderline, is because she wanted to play those funny scenes, but they did it in the context of a movie that wouldn't surprise people, because it was still like a Claire Trevor kind of role.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we did it, Ann. We made it through. This was over 2 hours. Holy cow. I hope that people are sticking with us.
Yeah.
But and we've only gotten like a third of the way through all the questions we got for this month. So, and I'm sure now people are going to send in more questions, and
which we'll answer next month.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Yeah. I think so. What you're telling me is you have shut the door on April questions.
I have. So anything that came past Wednesday, well, it would have been Wednesday of last week when we broadcast this. Well, last Wednesday. It's going into the hopper for May.
Okay, very good.
So I always have a set cutoff point so that, you know, so we're not trying to add questions at the last minute and stuff.
Okay, very good. And if people didn't hear their questions answered, don't worry. They will be, and some of them I saw and intentionally asked Anne to put them off, because people were saying, what did you think of this movie or that movie? And I hadn't seen it. And they said, well, if we put it off, I may have a chance to actually watch it, and then I can give an intelligent answer.
And it's really funny because I had just watched that film for the second time recently. So I was very excited when that question came in. So I'm looking forward to it.
Aja, we're talking about you.
We are talking about you. I can't wait to talk about it.
Okay.
I may watch it a third time.
Very good. Okay, so that's it. Thanks, fans. You guys are the greatest, and we will be back soon, right?
Yeah, next Thursday and the following Thursday.
Okay, very good. Very good. And you take care.
You too.
Okay, we'll see you. Bye.
See ya.